Suns fans, you know what time it is in the PHX.
Empire of the Suns.
Phoenix Suns.
Empire of the Suns.
The Empire of the Suns podcast is brought to you by Sonic. Drive to your nearest Sonic location and don't forget to order your half-price drink or slush anytime in the Sonic app.
Hello there, and welcome to the Empire of the Suns podcast. My name is Kellen Olson, joined as always by Kevin Zimmerman. What's up, man?
It's been a minute. Scheduling things, life, but we're back for a very important episode right now. I guess. I think we have to be here.
I'm off the Spurs, man. I've decided the San Antonio Spurs are now my mortal enemy in the world. So last year, I'm covering the World Series one day, going to that Spurs back-to-back the other day last year. I get bronchitis this year. So those are my first and second time seeing Wemby. Third time seeing Wemby is a week and a half ago. And then I get Rona, as you can still hear in my voice, as it's still coming up every now and then. Like I'm in the clear now. Everything's all good. But yeah, so screw Wemby, screw Chris Paul. I hate the Spurs now. They clearly keep getting me sick. Hopefully this time doesn't lead to an organ getting removed from my body like last time, like hopefully we can keep everything inside me this time.
You're really playing to Suns fans right now with the anti-Spurs rhetoric here, but I won't complain. I'm glad you're doing okay. You're back. We're here. We're doing this Zoom because we finally got this together, and we have some updates based on the Jimmy Butler news. Kellen, what color is your hair?
Still brown. It is still brown. Yeah, I have a whole spiel on this, and I'll save it, thankfully, for a lot of people for like later into the podcast because it's like very obscure and like I'm gonna go a little while, so I'll save that for a bit later. But yeah, apologies by the way for us missing 3 weeks, but like Thanksgiving and then I get Rona. It's just like, it happens real fast. But as you said, thankfully, if you want to put it that way, you guys know how if long-time listeners, even like mild-time listeners, like people who've only been around for like a year, maybe 18 months or whatever, kind of know how we feel about a lot of this stuff. But we're going to talk about it. Jimmy Butler linked to the Suns, likes the Suns, dyes his hair orange. Kevin, take us through all the happenings because I don't want to.
Okay, so Wednesday, Shams Charania says... Tuesday he says the Warriors, the Rockets, the Mavs are potential destinations of interest for Jimmy Butler if he wants to force a trade from the Heat. Yesterday was Wednesday. He adds the Suns to that group, and then immediately Jimmy Butler's agent basically says that's fabricated. I didn't spend time yesterday doing this.
Kevin, there's a community note on the tweet. We lost Woj for 3 months, and we've got community notes on tweets. It's crazy.
Yeah. Fabricated bullspit, as they say. And then
here's so I'll just briefly do the thing. Another team that Jimmy Butler's agent Bernie Lee has indicated in league circles. So the source is not Jimmy Butler. It is not the agent. It is people in league circles. Like,
yes.
I don't care if it's true or not. Like, what are we doing?
This is how reporting works. It's technically not wrong, probably. And we can say that because, like, I trust Gambo. John Gambadoro today, he did research. He talked to people.
Yeah, of course.
He comes and says, Shams isn't wrong. Whoever he's talking to is hearing the same things.
Which is?
My crazy idea is this is Jimmy Butler's like the source, and he's just causing chaos because he went and told Miami reporters like, it's not bad to be in I don't know the exact words. He basically said it's not bad to have attention on you. It's not bad to have bad, like whatever PR. He's living this, loving this, and his hair color has changed 4 times. Today it was orange right about the same time Gambo was about to go on air at 2 p.m. and talk about, yes, his interest is in the Suns, absolutely. And Gambo also said the Suns are probably number one in terms of hierarchy of where Jimmy Butler wants to land. this to me, even before Gambo, it's a little different because it's Jimmy Butler. It's not like the Woj Kevin Durant thing with the Rockets in the summer. To me, was the Rockets just want to get out there. We want to make a big splash. We want to trade for anyone. Let's just throw out the name that's obvious. But this one involving Jimmy Butler, just me guessing, is like Jimmy Butler wants attention and wants out is basically all I'm getting at, I guess.
I think he wants his extension, and he wants to show that he has leverage elsewhere, which is
Yeah.
And then Pat Riley's like, you're gonna make me take on Bradley Beal's contract, or you're gonna leave, then okay. See you later. Like it was you did well for us, Jimmy. Goodbye. We'll dive a little bit deeper into that and like what it means, because as always, as we teach people on this podcast, whenever things are reported, generally there's a purpose behind it. And right now, I would almost guarantee that the reason why this is being reported and why it is being leaked is because Jimmy Butler is trying his best to get an extension. Brian Windhorst on the NBA Today reported today that like I can't remember if he said most likely outcome or like the intent or whatever, but
He said Jimmy's ideal situation is extension.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll pause there for everyone's sanity that doesn't care about like the journalism ethics 101 crap. Not that we're going to go too far into that, just like we feel the need to speak our piece on it. We'll go basketball here. The two main roadblocks here that we're just not getting around. We're just not going to get around. And I'll sit here and be wrong in a couple of weeks when Jimmy Butler's on the Suns and Brad's in Miami or Brad is somewhere else. But the two incredible roadblocks in the way of this that make this pretty much impossible is that Brad has to waive his no trade clause, which, look, we know that he wanted to go to Miami. That's great. Would he want to go to Miami now? Like they're a different team now. When he wanted to go to Miami, guess who he was going to play with? Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's now going the other way. Now Brad would still have Bam Adebayo and a couple of capable pieces around him, but would he be on a contender? Would he be on a better team that he's on right now? No, and Brad just wants to win. So let's say you find a third team to take on Bradley Beal. That third team, are they going to be in a position that Bradley Beal wants to be in? Probably not. So he's not going to waive his no trade clause there either. The second part is finding the team that'll take on, the trouble is even more so. I think Brad not so much waiving his no trade clause. I think that it's even more so finding a team to take him on, because Jimmy could strong arm this and say, send me to Phoenix, nowhere else, which we've seen happen in the past with the Phoenix Suns. The issue is he's strong arming in a way that is forcing the Heat's hand, as I mentioned earlier, into taking on Bradley Beal's contract or nothing. Now, the interesting part is if the Suns were willing to include the 2031 pick, that is where things could maybe get somewhat enticing for Miami. You could at least talk me into this being realistic. But Gambo said on the air today that he highly doubts that the 2031 pick would be involved. So you need to find teams that would want to take on Brad. And I just don't see any reason why any teams would want to. In Miami's case, especially, the benefits that they would get from opening up Jimmy's money next year, as opposed to keeping Brad for 2 more years, like the benefits just aren't there. And for as much as I still believe that Bradley Beal is a very good piece for the Suns right now and is helpful to them right now and is a positive winning player, he is not close to worth that contract in that situation for Miami. And he's not here either. Like that's not really the whole point here. But I just don't see a situation where any team in the league, unless you are giving up the pick to get off of Brad and get Jimmy, it makes sense. And Gambo saying he highly doubts the pick is on the move kind of made me go. Any sort of situation I had in my head of this kind of maybe happening went out the window there. So it's just frustrating because we're in this to briefly go there and then we'll dip back to basketball. It's just, I'm so logic based with everything I talk about. I think our listeners know that by now. This just doesn't get past the logic of the Brad thing at the end, but we're still talking because these parts are really interesting, but that part at the end, it's just no avoiding that.
Yeah. I think it's worth talking about because I mean it's very clear that it's going to dominate the news cycle for the next few months. Like, I've got to accept it. You've got to accept it. I don't think.
Isn't that weird? How'd that happen?
I like that. That's Jimmy Butler, though. Jimmy Butler's that guy who apparently wants attention now. How he's exited every other team, right? Has there been a clean exit out of another team? I don't remember the Bulls situation per se, but like he
I
makes
remember the
big.
Timberwolves situation.
Oh, I remember the Sixers. Like he makes noise before he leaves. That's what he
Yeah.
does, and that's. I'll talk on this later, but that's why it's a risk on the Suns' end. But to get to the nitty gritty and the functionality of it real quick, look, the Suns, to be quick on it, could do a two-team swap. Gambo checked on this. Keith Smith for Sport Track actually did a really good piece on it. Go look that up. But basically, it's like Beal and Jimmy's contract basically could be a one-for-one swap in most situations, but because both teams are aproned, then Beal is a little more money, and it would actually push Miami over the second apron, like the Suns. So they can't do it unless they include a vets minimum contract. You can basically throw vets minimums around like that, just to make things easier. So it's theoretically possible, and that's where it's like that's actually more likely even than kind of figuring out a three-team trade, right? Because again, what you just spoke on, I don't know who wants Brad, but then you talk about Miami doesn't want to put themselves in salary cap hell for a couple more years. And I was on Arizona Sports at Night for you, and you joined us yesterday in a weird situation. And we talked about like the Suns would make this move not only because you can argue it makes them better because Jimmy fits, he gives them the grit, whatever, but it's a cap move just to get them off Brad's contract and keep them in the title hunt this year or maybe even next year if he picked up that option. Probably won't, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to fathom anything that makes sense. What other team would want Bradley Beal and could take him on and be like, this is just going to boost our profile? You could make arguments for people. I don't even think I'm that far in this track. And Gambo's, the other thing we should mention now is Gambo's reporting is the Suns do want to see this out a little longer. Like they want to see, hey, we did what? They're 11-2 with KD, correct?
Yeah.
They look at their schedule for the next month. They should go on a roll, and this will quickly touch on the Suns that we haven't talked about in a couple weeks. Like, if they're healthy, they should just blow away a lot of these teams and win a lot based on even what we saw earlier in the season. If they're healthy, their schedule is pretty easy and through the middle of January. And that should make them feel a lot better. That should take away any bad feelings if you're worried about Bradley Beal's body language, that kind of stuff. So Gambo says they want to see this out. And again, the trade deadline's far off, so we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What else do we got? What other angle you want to talk about? Do you want to go on your rant yet?
No, not yet. It makes, I think like the trade itself makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like it's something that you would look into. And I think I think the unanswerable question for me, like besides the Brad stuff, is the championship equity for this team low enough right now with its current iteration that you'd give up the 2031 pick? See, I don't think that they should care too much about giving up the 2031 pick for something short term. This whole thing is short term.
Yeah.
Like you can look at what the Warriors are doing and see like, oh, see two windows at once, it works. And it's like it didn't really work for them. And it's like you can't really do that. That's like that needle in a haystack type odds there to actually do that type of thing. That's not exactly comparable, but the point I'm trying to make is like you did all of these moves and like double down, triple down, quadruple down. Like you might as well quintuple down at that point with the pick. So if they get the belief within their building, they're kind of looking at the dynamic behind the scenes. They have a lot more information into it than we do, how the vibes are doing, how everything is going together. We'll briefly touch on it. The team has not been playing well. Kevin Durant got injured again. And with this injury that came up, the left ankle sprain, the Suns look vaguely similar to last year, not 100% similar. Don't get me wrong. but there's like these bad spurts, and then they lose the game because of these bad spurts. And that's all that happened last year. They would just lose focus for 3 minutes and the game was over. That's what happened in the playoffs, at least. And that's what happened in all three of those games. So maybe some of that going on, maybe looking at these next couple of weeks and they kind of look around and it's like, okay. And then at that point, if you do believe that this thing is like more or less cooked and your odds this year and next year or whatever, if you want to look at Jimmy Butler as not just a 1-year deal, then maybe you do consider, you should at least consider moving the pick in this kind of deal for sure, if not pulling the trigger, because everything we've talked about with this team in terms of like its problems, Jimmy fixes a lot of it. Some of our complaints recently just about focus, toughness, etc., like Chris Paul things that they've clearly are lacking right now, he would help out with. You would actually have a small forward now. You would actually have like a good team with size. You would have someone who scores at the rim a lot. Teams with Jimmy not as the guy have been pretty hit or miss over his career and like his role within it. He's not a guy who shoots threes. So that would be an interesting wrinkle to kind of get into. I haven't watched enough of Miami in the regular season this year to speak on the level of defender that he is, but he's Jimmy Butler. I'm guessing he's still going to be pretty fine at it. He's not, again, the guy that's going to come in and like he's going to be able to guard the number one option every single night. Like it's going to depend on the night. But the fit is there. It's just, would you take this 1-year flyer to kind of take a look at things? And then if you lose in the conference finals in 7, or if you make the NBA finals, you have to win the thing. Is that like, oh, okay, let's re-sign Jimmy. Let's re-sign Kevin. Screw it. The second apron's going to freeze our picks, whatever. Let's go for it again.
Yeah, and the super interesting part again about Jimmy is if it was that trade, the fits there, if that was the case that they wanted to make the trade, it's Beal is not the right. It's a vibes move almost too. It's a fit move and it's a vibes move. It's his DNA fits what you need around KD and Book more than Brad's. We've talked about Brad has to be a 3-and-D guy, and he's trying his best. But Jimmy in that locker room changes the vibes immensely. And that's the most, like, from a human being standpoint, fascinating part. I think like KD got along on the Warriors because like as aggressive as Draymond is, I'm sure KD responds well to that stuff. If he's called out, whatever. They had an infrastructure, but I don't know if the Suns have enough stability in the last few years for Jimmy to not come in and be the voice. And there's not a Steve Kerr, Steph Curry to like kind of, okay, like you got to fit your deal into this. Like he would shake things up, and I think it would be good, but you have to consider that volatility that, like, look, if Jimmy Butler was on the team on the Suns right now, this deep into the season, for example, for the first time, I don't think it'd be going well. I think internally it would be going a lot worse than it's going now. So that's where I'm like this. There's a lot more volatility possible if he's on your roster. That's from the evidence we have on where he's been and what he's done in other stops. That's a risk to me. And by the way, he hasn't played more than 64 games in his entire Miami Heat career, which is what, like 5, 6, I think it's in the 6th year now. He doesn't solve the thing about Beal, as injury prone as he is. Beal's a lot younger. Jimmy's what, 34, 35 right now? So yeah, it's kind of replicating a lot of the same issues, whether you're talking about contracts, age, availability, and then just the vibe issues is completely different than Bradley Beal's like small potatoes compared to that.
Yeah, for as much as you can look at all the positives that are there, like some of what I listed, this is not like I said it on the show last night, like this is not a flawless for a flawed player, even if Jimmy is a good fit for kind of what they need on the court and everything. Like it is not a perfect situation at all. And like, especially with his age, like if he was 3 years younger, like every team would be looking to trade for him right now too. That's like the other thing, but he's not. Okay, I'll say my thing for a second.
Yep.
So, okay. So there's like 7 people listening who are going to be with me on this reference. The rest of you just try and stick along for the ride. So wrestling is what people refer to as fake, right? I've been thinking about this all day. Wrestling is fake, right? It's not real. People refer to it as fake. It's more so scripted, like when you watch guys do a match together, they're going through it beforehand, and then some combination of that conversation plus the conversations are happening to them in the middle of the ring. They're kind of going along and showing what the deal is, right? There is a pioneer icon, like he has some people who are not fans of him who have soured it for him for legitimate reasons, but there's a guy named Dave Meltzer who does the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and he's been doing it since before I was born, a weekly report where he kind of tells you what's going on behind the scenes. So he does this 30, 40 years ago. Like, people are reading about it because he would mail it to them. He would literally mail it to them, and they would read it in that kind of way. So the people that would read it would like find out that wrestling is fake, right? And they would learn certain things in that kind of way. And then they would learn that like this guy and this guy don't get along. There's backstage drama over this relationship and that event. And like this guy isn't getting a push. He's not getting put in like the right place on the show because he did this. And there's all this juicy drama. And then the internet happens. And then this kind of becomes just as much of a talking point around wrestling as wrestling itself. Like the drama around wrestling, like there was a big thing where a guy named CM Punk got into a fight last year. And this was a thing where if it would have happened 30, 40, 50 years ago, we might have heard about it. And if we heard about it, it was because our friend gets the newsletter from Dave mailed to him every whatever week, and he told his friend that. But even then, you're like, you don't know. Now you just like read the story and there's pictures everywhere and there's video everywhere. And kind of what I'm trying to say is, and like the comparison here is that, like, if Jimmy Butler was haggling over his contract like 30 years ago, it would be handled in a completely different way. It would be just as sloppy, but just in a totally different way where attention wouldn't be panned in certain directions. But now, because Jimmy Butler is haggling over his contract, now we've got at least 72-hour news cycle here in Phoenix about Jimmy Butler on the Phoenix Suns, and then elsewhere because of what this is kind of turned into now and what kind of sports is. Does that make sense? Like, wrestling should just be about wrestling, and now it is just as much about wrestling as it is like this guy is not getting a push because he wants to go to WWE, and this guy got in a fight with that guy and he doesn't show up on that show because these two guys don't really like each other, and ooh, they're in the ring now. What's going to happen? Like, they don't like each other, but are they going to actually, oh, is this real? Is this fake? What's going on? It like changed everything in like good and bad ways, but this has been mostly bad ways where I love to talk about trades and do like the roster speculation stuff just as much as anyone, but not anymore because of this kind of stuff popping up where it's like, this is just Jimmy angling for a contract. Now, if he's angling for his contract and he doesn't prove successful, is he available on the trade market and could the Suns trade for him? Yes. So like there's some truth to this at the very end of it, and there's truth to all of it, is what I'm trying to say. But point being, like, even like 5 years ago, like how much less of this was there, even 3 years ago, think about it. And now it's just everywhere. All the time, aggregated constantly. And it's like, it's just so jarring to me. And I don't even know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. That's maybe the worst part, because I don't know if it's good or bad. It's bad that the league put all these restrictions in place when this is like sort of become what their league is about now. But yeah, it's just crazy. So that was my nerdy thing I couldn't stop thinking about all day today. And it's just like, sports aren't what they used to be. In a good way or a bad way, you can decide for yourself and kind of tell where I land on it. But yeah, it wasn't like sports weren't romanticized like 50 years ago. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, we're in different times now. Where like this is just, as Mike and Sam refer to it, as slop. Like slop is just part of our lives now consistently, and it's like now it's slop season. We're gonna do this all the way until the deadline.
Not to get into, inner office workings, but that's like if things that happen in every listener's workplace, like there's drama. Steve at the water cooler was telling Janice about Pam screwing up the TPS reports, and Janice walked by and heard about it, and then it got like stuff like that is just out there now. Like that's kind of what the NBA is.
The Embiid stuff earlier this year, like the line coming from Maxey, like it wasn't even that there was a team meeting. Like we have details now of like what is said inside the meetings and by who and by for what. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, like it's basically the same thing as. That's why I always make the joke when I'm talking about how people like romanticize sports reporting, and it's like, no, I just go and show up and I have to ask people about how their job was today. And if you ask me about that, I'd be like, yeah, man, I sat at a computer for, 7.5 hours out of 8. I took kind of a long lunch break. Maybe I lost focus a little bit there. And like that, but that's the detail we look at these people's lives, which I don't know, man. We have reality TV, which is much worse things. We've really gone down a rabbit hole here. But yeah, no, it's fun.
Yeah, that wouldn't have played on Burns and Gamble tomorrow, so I just wanted to say it somewhere because it's been again, it's been really all I've been thinking about. Like when I thought of it, I was like that.
I also learned something about the newsletter thing. It reminded me, by the way, there was a story, I think it was an Oregon columnist, I don't remember which one, but Steve Patterson used to be like he was in charge of the Coyotes for a little bit. He was in charge of the Blazers before that. There was a story about how once there was a reporter who reported about a possible trade by the Blazers, a proposal, and it's because the reporter walked past a fax machine and saw some executive faxed over, this was probably in the 90s or something, hey, we will offer this for this. And the reporter was like, well, that seems pretty legitimate. And then like Steve Patterson got very mad because it's like, how did that get out there? Got mad at all of his staffers. And then they find out, oh, it was just left on the fax machine and the reporter walked by it and learned of this, something that probably never was going to happen. But, the percentage of things that are talked about that don't happen in sports are probably, 95% of the things don't actually happen. So, it's fun.
Yeah, and it just always finds a way of happening, right? Like this looked like it was going to be like a fairly calm thing, and then like Jimmy Butler happens out of nowhere. Like it always finds a way to keep happening. We briefly touched on it, and I don't think there's much else to say besides what I did with how the team has been playing lately. Did you have any kind of thoughts? Like I said it on the air a lot. You've said it in other places as well. Devin Booker needs to be way, way better. Don't really know what's going on with him. I was the one sitting here on the pod saying, oh, like he needs a break. Like give him some time. Like he probably needs some time, probably dealing with something, physical, whatever it was. And then Bradley Beal needs to be way better too. But I think it's much more of it goes on Booker than it does on Beal. But he just needs to be way better, and it'll follow suit from there because the supporting cast has been pretty good.
Yeah. My thing in this late stretch is I haven't looked up the numbers in the last few days since they haven't played, but they were bottom 10 over the last 10 games in defense. The offense has been kind of there, but like the Magic example, like letting the Magic score on you and you just can't get enough stops down the stretch. Like I think they've not been playing as bad as people are making it out to be, but offensively, like the continuity is there. They're getting enough, but if you aren't going to be able to make stops on the Orlando Magic led by Jalen Suggs when Wagner and Ben Caro are out, then that's a little problematic. Not to take any away from that team, but yeah, I mean, it's been time and time again where it's just like, man, you can go on runs this team, but you can't just get over the hump in a lot of these situations because you can't get even 2 stops in a row. So that's where it is on this team. I think KD and Beal being healthy will have a lot of that will help. Even Nurk has not played well again this season, but I think just having that big body like Goga Batadze shouldn't be able to do that to you, So yeah, they got some time and again a good schedule coming up to figure out, at least go on a run, win some games, figure things out, and feel a lot better than they have been.
We're a month away from me going on like a power of friendship rant. Not to say that these guys don't like each other because they clearly get along and stuff, but like Orlando, for example, it's like you can tell those guys would like die for each other on the court. And it's like
Yeah.
that is by far what mattered the most in that game, and it was not even close. Like that camaraderie and that turned into energy and spirit for them. It's like basketball becomes so simple at the stage we're talking at it about, and I do not want to spend the next 4 months talking about it again, please. So I don't think it's going to be that while Kevin's healthy, but again, like just one ankle turn later, and we could be talking about it again. But we'll see. It's a conversation for when we get there, and it was just I wrote a thing after Sunday's loss where I was just like, look, man, like it's not every box is checked to compare it to last year, but the fact that there are any boxes checked is not good. It is alarming in
Yeah.
in at least a minor sort of way.
Joy is a word. I mean, Bradley Beal talked about this personally before the season. Like, there was joy in the first few games of this season, first 10 or whatever. Um, it was easy to see that on the team that went to the finals. And I know that's like really easy to just, oh, play with more joy. Enjoy that you make millions of dollars to play basketball. But like, that is chemistry to your point. Like, Orlando Magic have chemistry, even though they might not win every single game. Like, they have an identity. They know what they're doing. They're together. Rockets, they're there. The Warriors always are in that area. Some teams
Dallas,
have it.
really, I don't know if you've watched Dallas lately, but like they clearly vibe. Oklahoma City has for years
Yeah.
now at this
Yep.
point. Like that's obvious. So Minnesota on like the other end of it, like, hey, seemed like everything was like from a vibe standpoint was pretty good. It's pretty
Yeah.
good. Any Cats talk before we go?
Ooh. I don't know anything about UCLA. Arizona.
I know they suck.
Oh man, Arizona's had a rough go since we last talked, but the draft stock's
It's
fallen, man. I've heard good things about. Congrats to BYU for getting AJ DeBansa, if I'm pronouncing that correctly,
I
and
think you nailed that.
good job KD for helping Kevin Young recruit. If you saw that, the top prospect in 2026 probably going to go in that draft. Was like Kevin Young coached Kevin Durant. I would like to be coached by Kevin Young. I will go there for college.
It's
Very
it's
cool.
not that when Kevin Young took the job, I knew BYU was going to be a huge problem. It was just like my ears were not only perked up, but I was like, oh, as a U of A fan, I was like, oh no. Because like he
And
doesn't like a guy with serious chances to become an NBA head coach still doesn't just go take a head coaching job at a we'll call it for what it is. Like at that level of college basketball, it's like a glorified mid-major right now, BYU. But like they're obviously not going to be that with the amount of NIL money they have and having him as well. I don't know, man. There's a million problems with them right now. Like they don't have a point guard. Bradley's been good, but like leading the team, playmaking for others, that kind of stuff, which is like clearly what they need because their rhythm and flow as an offense is just entirely hinged on high low, which who could have seen that coming that was going to be a bad idea again.
yeah,
And it's a bad idea now really early into the year as opposed to the end of the year, still a problem. Colin Boswell has been terrific for the Illini. Kirk Kriisa is kind of floating around in Kentucky. He just got hurt. Kind of floated around at West Virginia, but even then, like he would be an upgrade right now, in my opinion, just to give them someone to set the table and set guys up. Caleb's been bad. Krivas, I don't know like how he's getting hyped as a first round pick right now. He's got a long way to go.
I'm off the train.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm firmly off of it as well. Carter Bryant was like the big fancy addition. They put him in the starting lineup, long overdue. A walk in the lineup, long overdue. They're nearly there with their lineup. Like Townsend, what does he do against the bad teams? He eats like he did in the Horizon League. This is not the Horizon League anymore. So we'll see. I think Caleb's going to bounce back in a big way, and he's going to still get them in the tournament. But that feels like asking for a lot right now with the way they started.
I'll do the thing, and congrats to ASU football. We're on that train. I would watch ASU basketball since this is the basketball podcast. Jane Quaintance is 17, can't even go in this draft, but very interesting. He's a big
Yeah,
man who basically can D up anyone.
I need someone to do the where they like layer over two people moving, like when they do for your thing,
Pitches.
the track, the no, the your thing, the track and field thing, where it's like time trials, and they have like the guy moving right next to you who's moving a little bit faster because he's the world record holder or whatever. I need that with like Jaden Quaintance and Amari moving next to each other sometimes because not saying he's Amari or the next Amari, but he just moves like him a lot, and it's like it's really weird.
Huh.
I see it. I see it all the time. He had the one-handed dunk in transition where he palmed the ball and like put it over top, and like that's how Amari used to do it. It's so weird to me. They play Florida, if you're listening to this, before Saturday afternoon. They play Florida, I believe, at 1 o'clock.
One or
Florida's
two,
the top 25 team. So if you've been kind of like, if you're more of a casual Valley sports fan or you haven't been checking out ASU hoops, that's a good one to see. That's a good litmus test kind of game for them because they nearly beat Gonzaga and they've had some other good wins as well. But yeah, it's going to be weird to hype up a bowl game to this magnitude. It hasn't really happened since we started working there, right?
No, I'm excited for that. It's fun to watch people being excited about something around here. We went to the other school, but I like people being excited around me.
Do I still call you boss man now, or do I call you boss man? Like, are you double boss now? What's up?
I don't know what you call me. You can call me idiot. I don't care.
All right, idiot. Sounds good.
Anything
Thanks for
else?
listening, everyone. That one was obviously all over the place, but we had some catching up to do. We had the Jimmy stuff, which I'm sure as people saw that news dropped and know how the podcast has been, how we talked about. Did we even talk about the Kyrie thing last summer? Remember that happening?
You mentioned it yesterday, and I was like, I don't even remember that. So I just blacked that one out of my brain.
Remember Bronny James to the Suns?
Yeah.
See what I mean? Like
He's he's probably just getting out of his game at Mullet Arena right now.
There's that story. There's Bronny. There's Kyrie. What was the other one? Durant to the Rockets. I'll loop in Booker to the Rockets there. And then this one. It's been 6 months. It's been 6 months. There's been 5 of them. Like this didn't used to happen. I'm not crazy.
Dude, my introduction to sniffing out BS reports actually was Woj. I think it was, oh God, I don't even remember. It was LeBron free agency before Heat, probably. When Robert
They got a meeting. They got a meeting, never forget.
Yeah, they got a meeting in Cleveland, I believe. And that was my introduction to just because they have a meeting doesn't mean it's going to happen. The Suns would have had to, I think, trade their basically entire roster to clear space to sign. Like, it made no sense. Yeah,
it made a lot of sense because like 23-year-old Kellen wrote a story for BrightSideOfTheSun.com. Like one of his first stories for the late great Dave King was about how the Suns are the best fit for LeBron James in free agency.
They could have been a good fit, but the salary, didn't make sense or something. I vaguely remember this and being like, this can't,
23-year-old Kellen did not care about that. He cared about LeBron James on the Suns, as
That's
anyone
fair.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there we were 6 months ago talking about LeBron James on the Suns. We're probably going to talk about LeBron James on the Suns next summer.
Yeah.
Bryce, when's he coming out?
He was at the Arizona game. He's going to go to Arizona.
I sent that to a friend and I was like, I can't believe they embarrassed us in front of the King.
Oh. What game was that?
I don't know, man. They all blend together at this point.
That might have been Duke.
I don't know. I was there. It wasn't great.
All right. Don't believe everything you hear.
We will be back next week. We'll find I'm doing the show next week 4 times, so we'll find a little window before one of those shows to do a little check-in. What do we got? Jazz tomorrow night. KD back. Everyone back. Blazers on Sunday, and then there's that gap, right? Pacers on Thursday. Okay.
Gotta make a run.
We'll tell you why Jimmy Butler's going to the Celtics because his hair is green. And then until then, goodbye.